Hello and welcome to today's video. So I've been gone for a while and now I'm back, and I've promised this before, but this time I can guarantee that I'm back to stay as long as I don't get as busy as I've been the last few weeks. If I look tired, that is because I am, and I've even got a drink here or a wrap to try and keep me awake. I'm not sponsored by them, nowhere near big enough for that, but I do need to stay awake today. And I thought today was a good day to come back and do a video. The video I've decided to do is on Riku. The reason I've done this is Riku is probably my favorite platform that's been released since the start of the AI boom. And the main reason I like this platform is because when I was first out here trying to get started in the world of AI, Riku was the first platform that came around that was allowed me to be able to, and allowed people like me to be able to create AI services very quickly, to be able to share them and to be able to provide value to businesses and also to myself as well, in terms of creating a system that you couldn't do without having to get really heavily into code, which in the position I was in at the time, working a full-time job that wasn't in the AI industry, really didn't allow me the time to mess about with code. I have more time to do that now, but at the time I couldn't, and that meant that I was having to try and put things together using no-code platforms or trying to use code that I was very comfortable with, like trying to build it on WordPress. And build something on WordPress using an API on OpenAI or on AI21 is incredibly difficult and requires a lot of custom coding in PHP, where there aren't really always libraries available to be able to connect with them, which again meant that I needed to rely on a platform that allowed me the chance to do that. And Riku let me do that. And the integrations here on Riku is still what I think is one of the most powerful parts of it. So if you are trying to build your own, either workflows or systems themselves, stuff like this is really useful. So if you've got a business and you want to use Google Sheets to be able to control the AI side of things between different people, it has integration for that. If you want to use Zapier to connect to different things to be able to automate them and then create stuff using AI, it has an integration for that. This single endpoint is what I use. It was a very simple endpoint that was able to make very simple, easy API connections, and it worked and still works perfectly. It allows me to be able to, if I create a system using one service, I can then integrate with it with this API, and then on the back end, if I ever need to change something else, I can once again integrate with it using that same API without having to make any change to the way that it works. And that's what's really good about using this particular platform and why I liked it at the time. The other side of it, again, is a massive community of people who allow their prompts to be looked at by people like me who was trying to learn at the time, and like you if you're trying to learn now. And it's a great platform to learn on. However, in recent months, it has changed in a big way, and it's had to, because suddenly we have so many different ways that AI is developing on the different API services, and the release of the chat services meant they had to have a chat app creator, which they've got here. And that is the reason why it's changed a lot. And a lot of people who use Riku, and you might be one of them, might think it's suddenly become incredibly complex. It's suddenly much harder to use Riku than it was before. And I don't believe that's the case. I still believe this is much easier than trying to connect with it in any other way, other than perhaps using Chat-GPT itself, but then you've only got Chat-GPT that you can use for it. But this here is a great service, and again, it's created by Stuart Lansdale, a very knowledgeable person in the large language model space, and who has really been right at the forefront of releasing products like this and like content development when it first came out, and Super Machine, which is also out for text to image. And he's done a really good job of creating a service that is always at the cutting edge of the large language models that are out there. So we're going to go into today is going to be a bit of an overview, a bit of a tutorial. I can go a bit deeper if people want to know more about the platform. But I'm here really, if you've got Riku, to say to you, don't stop using it. It's still a really useful service. If you haven't got Riku, I'm here to encourage you to maybe take a look at it. You do get a free trial for the first 7 days. There is a link in the description of the video, which is an affiliate link. I'm open about that. I've always affiliated with Riku. But this is a service that, in my opinion, is a great service to use. And I would recommend it on the basis that it can allow you to do things that you might find harder to do if you were to try and do them manually or try and create them manually. Like I said here, this API access, if you use a Darlo or Bubble, it's incredibly easy to integrate the API into those platforms without having to do much work at all, and it can really speed up the creation of any AI service that you want to build. And I will go through how you do that as we go on with the video. So to start off with, over here on the left hand side, this is all of the different things that you can do within Riku. Now, one thing that I love about the way that this is built is that every single part of it is created to allow you to be able to create your own public sort of share services or services that you can be used by you or by people that you give access to it, which means that it's all there to allow you to create products and create services for people to get value from the large language models. And that is something that I think is really valuable about this service, because if you go into the Chat App Studio and you create a chat app, you can then publish that chat app publicly, and people can use it. If you create a prompt in the Prompt Studio and you want people to use it, you can do a share document and they can use it, or you can connect to it using the API access. If you do any of the things on here, you're able to release that to the world. And that gives you the opportunity to be able to say to people, hey, I've created this service here. I've created this really unique prompt. You don't need to go and use Chat-GPT. Use my service here, and you can make money from that, which is a really important thing when you are trying to get your head into the world of AI, because you've only got so many hours of the day. If you're like I was a few years ago and you are working in a job, you've got maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours a day that you can dedicate to trying to get the best out of AI. And if you're going to get really good at it, you need to up that amount of hours that you can do. You can only do that if you're getting a return on it. If you're releasing prompts into the world and people are looking at those prompts and using them and getting great value out of them, but you're making nothing, then you're going to just have to stop, because you won't have the time to keep doing it, no matter how much of a good hobby it might be for you. And that is why this is useful, because if you release something into the world, you can make a bit of money from it, give the access to it, and then you can invest that and give yourself some more time to do it. So if we take a look into the Chat App Studio, I like this one. So I built this here, this little Beat the Gatekeeper app. And what this does is it basically allows you to practice as though you were trying to make a cold call to somebody to try and sell to them. And what's really good about this is, for example, if I say, I'm looking to speak to the owner, this will act as though it is a gatekeeper in a business who is trying to stop you from speaking to the owner. And again, so Stacey, this isn't the owner, doesn't want to speak to them, and basically wants to stop you right there. Now, the way this has been created is very simply by creating it's a chat service. It's built on GPT 3.5. So if we go onto the chat app here, so when we go to it, this is what I've built. So I've basically built here, this is one of my tests on it. And what it's done here is on the left hand side, it's got the information here, which is what the public sees, the technologists use. So you can use GPT-3, Claude, WizardLM, which has just been added recently, which is an open source, uncensored version, which some people might want to use if they want to talk about things that perhaps wouldn't be allowed on Chat-GPT or Claude. And down here, this prompt here is the system prompt. So the whole point of the system prompt is that it gives it a context that will work all the way through. So if this conversation goes on for 500 messages, the person who is speaking to you will still stay consistent with that. Now, Claude doesn't have that in it, but it has got a very long context window, so it kind of will still work. But that allows you to make use of the latest version of Chat-GPT and the latest improvements to Chat-GPT. So as they continue to make it more valuable, the system prompt, which it did do with the recent update, this will allow you to really, really develop unique experiences within this and then release it publicly. So as you can see here, once I click this publish your app over here on the right hand side, as you can see, this public link here allows you to make it public. So you can embed it on your website. You can give it a link here. Create embed HTML. So down here, you've got your embedded version. So what you can do is set the colors to keep it with your branding for it. You can set a password. So again, you can control who uses this. So if you set this password on here, you can then basically offer it as a service to a business. Say, right, okay, I'm going to allow you to use this for your employees to be able to chat with it. but if they stop paying you, you can then change the password again and they can't access it anymore. So it allows you to be able to create products on it, which is something that I think is really useful if you are really wanting to use this as either a consulting service or as a public service. So as we take a look on here, that's how it's being created. Now, as you can see here, this knowledge base is the next step as to what you can do to make this even more useful. So the system prompt here is incredibly useful because this is going to give you the context of the conversation, the information for them to use when the AI is coming up with its responses. But the knowledge base goes that step further. So when you go into the Knowledge Studio here, you can create a new data set up here. And what it will do is it will allow you to update up some PDF files. You can put some URLs in there, create it from that page. You can just type the information in if you want to. And this knowledge base will be used for any conversations that the AI has. So, for example, if you have a really long textbook and you want the AI to be a tutor based on that textbook, you can upload the PDF file of the textbook. You can then go to the chat app. You can switch that knowledge base on. That knowledge base will use the textbook, and then every time that question is asked, it will check through the knowledge base, check through the textbook, and then respond to you based on the information in the textbook. Or again, from a website, you could put 4, 5, 10, 20 different blog posts, all with loads of information in, and that will be fed into the AI. So when it comes to a conversation, partway through the conversation, someone asks a question about the information on the blog posts, and it will respond with that information. And like I said here, what this is able to do is it's able to be released publicly as a chat that go on your website. It can go on a hidden sort of page just for people who have paid to have a service from you, and you can provide that to them using this particular platform without any code whatsoever. It is just a embed code to go on your website, which you just copy, paste, and it's done. If you're using something like Claude, and that is where things get a little bit different, because if you're using Claude, this down here isn't as important, but this is still the first bit of the conversation. It gives the information to the chatbot to be able to use. And Claude is really good because it has a massive context window. It's got 100,000 tokens that it can use as its context window, which means that the conversation will continue. The downside to Claude is if you want this to be like this particular bot where it's got the information about what it's meant to do, how it's meant to respond, the information it's meant to relay to the person. Once you get quite far down, that first bit of the conversation isn't as important anymore. It can start drifting away and drifting away and drifting away from that. So for example, if you have got 300 messages in with Chat-GPT, it will still call itself Stacy because the name of the person is Stacy. If you're speaking to Claude, it may not do that, because even though you've had all that long conversation, even though it's still in the context window, it's no longer important. If it hasn't said that it's called Stacy since the second or third message, it may then change its name to Claude or to something completely different, or make it up on the spot. And that is why it's really important to decide which version of the technology you want to use. And that's what's great about this, because if Claude suddenly gets better at that, or for example, if you are wanting to switch off something again, which is just a conversation where it's giving information to it, Claude might be better, because you might want to keep the context of the conversation down the messages, which is okay because there's no specific information it needs to give, but it's able to still follow the actual context of what they're talking about and move with the conversation over time without losing the information spoken about before, which will happen with GPT 3.5 when you get about, say, 20,000 characters in. Basically, even though the actual context in the system prompt will stay the same, the actual conversation you're having will have drifted away from that original conversation, and it won't be able to then go back and stay consistent with what it said earlier in the conversation. Wizard LM is totally different. I haven't used this yet. It's only just gone into here. But say if you want to talk about things that may not be allowed on the other platforms, that could be useful for you, because it does let you talk about absolutely anything without it stopping it, or without, on GPT 3.5, for example, without you losing access to your API. So we've looked at the Chat Studio, we've looked at the knowledge base, which again is incredibly useful and a great I still believe this is great because you can do this in other platforms using code, or platforms that will just allow you to create one particular service. But on Riku, you can create, say, 50 knowledge bases based on 100 different chats, and it will allow you to do it. And that is what is so good about this particular platform. Now, once we move away from chats and you go into Prompt Studio, so as you can see on here, there are a few different ways to be able to create a prompt. So your freestyle one just lets you, it works like the old playground on OpenAI, where you just put in some information and then you complete it. Your zero input just lets you put in a prompt and then it will complete it based on a prompt. And then your input defined modular is a new one that you may not have seen, but lets you get some different inputs. Now, Riku used to be quite simple because all of the other AI services were simple. You would just use your playground here and you would write the prompts out in a particular way and it would always get the same sort of response, which was great, but AI has changed now, so that doesn't work quite as well. If we go here into the modular one, this is something that I quite like. It's a new way of being able to come up with your prompts, but it's one that does move with the times. So as you see here, you've got your instruction up here, and then you've got your different inputs. So what's really good here is that you're able to tell the AI what you want it to do. So if we go from, we'll stick with the open source version, and we'll just use this example on here. If it lets me do it, no, it's not going to let me do it. So let's just do it here. So we're going to say what we want it to do. Now we can make this very simple. So input label here. So then we'll put here an example, which is so very simple, not a very good one. This isn't a prompt engineering episode, just so you know. But then basically, so we've got our input here, and we're going to say that we want one now for a football club. Now, this probably isn't going to be very good because firstly, the prompt is terrible, but secondly, GPT-3 isn't always the greatest. But as you can see here, we've got the output, which is not very good at all because, of course, it's not. So let's just change it over. Let's go for Claude, and let's see what Claude does. There we go. So as you can see here, Claude is a chatbot. So again, it's taken the two different ideas, and what it's done here is it has made that better. So if we now change this over, we'll pop this over here because that is a much better one, and we'll take that. Pop that in there because that is a much better one. And then what we'll do is we'll see what Claude comes up with this time. And again, what it's done here, it has not quite understood what we're trying to do. So because here it's a conversation, and as far as the chat's concerned, the conversation should include a idea of rewriting that. So what we'll do is we'll go away from a conversation bot and we'll go down here to OpenAI's DaVinci, because DaVinci is the old style of AI where it understands that this is meant to be an example, not meant to be part of the conversation. So let's see what DaVinci does. Take a little bit longer because it's not quite as quick as the other models. And there we go, it has written the information down there. And then if we go for something different, we'll go for a restaurant in a big city. And once again, it will send it off and it will come back with an output. And this, I think, is what's really important. Is it's important to understand the differences between the different models. So when you're looking at, for example, Claude, over here we've got your instruction over here. This needs to make it very clear that what's underneath is an example, so you could still get it to work. That is where prompt engineering is still really important. Now if we take a look here, there we go, it's given us a nice little idea, and as you can see what it's done is it has wrote it based on this, because it knows we're meant to be describing what this is going to be like. We're meant to be coming up with kind of an idea that's going to power the entire episode of this commercial. If we maybe go back to Claude here, what we will do is we will, instead of having, we're going to try and work this so that Claude will be able to do it. Based on my information, use the example provided. So there we go. And now we're going to try and see if Claude works better this time. And as you can work out here, this is where prompt engineering is really good. There we go. So now it knows the first one's an example. This is what we are now providing it with. So when we take a look at the way that these different models all work, it allows you in here to test them. And as you can see here, the different ones will work in a different way, and some will give you better content than other ones will. So we'll try and create it again because that possibly was good. I mean, I quite like the little tagline there. And there we go. It gives us an answer. So what's really important here is that we work out how we're going to develop it. So we'll up the output token so we'll get a longer response. And that's going to allow us to be able to get really good information from it depending on which model we're using. And we compare them between each other as well, which we'll come to in a second, the really powerful way of being able to do that. Once we're happy with it, we'll go over here to save. And what we're able to now do is we are able to not just use this in here. So we've tested it, we're happy with it. We're going to go here as a commercial bot. We could develop it further, but I'm quite happy with this as it is, as a test. So TV commercials here. We'll save the prompt. Not realize it needs to have that. So restaurant. So we'll save the prompt in there. Now we're able to do. So we've saved it. We're all set. We have a commercial bot that's being created. And then what we can do here is we can now publish it. Now when we publish it, what we can do here, we can get a public link. So that link here is one that we can then go to, and we can use this to be able to go in and give it to people to be able to go and create their own ones. You can then embed it if you want to on a page. You can put a password if you want to as well. We're just going to create here this page. We'll save it. And then what we'll do over here is we'll load up the app. And this could be used by anyone. So we could put in here, okay, cool, we've got that. We want to create one for a local supermarket. Then we run it, and what it's going to do is going to give us an output in a second, which we are then able to. There we go. So we've got our commercial bots information. Great stuff. We've got a commercial for a supermarket. So what we've got here now, we've created it, and we've got a load of different ones on here. But what's the next thing you can do? If you click on this publish one here, you've got your app that we've created. So we know we can go to there, we can share that with people, we can let anybody use it if they want to, and we're all good to go. But underneath, we've also got this copy prompt ID. Now the prompt ID is there for the integration. So if you want to then use this in an app externally, you don't want to use the published page we've got on here. We want to get it into our own software. This prompt ID is incredibly useful because this prompt ID allows you to then attach it to a WordPress form, for example. So the WordPress form is in Elementor. You've got a little PHP script that's connected to the form, and that will connect to this API and return it to it. Or, as I said, if you use Bubble or a Dalo or another no-code builder, for example, Moxie is one that I use, and you want to then use it here, copy that prompt ID, and you can use that in a API within that platform, and it's really easy to use and it's really simple. Unlike the OpenAI one that sends loads of information back, it's really simple. You send the information that it asks for, it returns you your response, and you show that on your front end. So this here allows you to do a lot of different things that you can't do if you are using the OpenAI's one, or you're using the AI21 API or the Claude API, where it takes time to be able to get access to it and then to be able to use it. This allows you to get something out there on a simple form or within your own app very, very easily. Now down here at the bottom, this experiment one is really good, because what I said there, you can take your prompt that you've created, and then that prompt you've created here, you can then test it on loads of different models, and that is extremely useful. So you've got a load of different ones here that I have created in the past. So it doesn't have our nice new one, I don't think it has that yet. Let's find out. Maybe it does. It's the commercial bot. Yep, there we go. There's a commercial bot right there. Surprised I didn't see that. But then what you can do is you can go down here. So I want to test against Alfalfa. Let's go Claude. Let's go a bit further down here. Let's try GPT Turbo. Let's also maybe try, let's go to GPT-3 as well, and this plan, I've never used that. So it's going to test it against all 5 of those different models. It's going to tell us which one's the best. We're going to be able to look at it and go, right, okay, which one do we like? So let's go for an SEO company now, so something totally different. We run the experiment, and now what it's going to do is it's going to test all of them and give us outputs from all of them. So we can see, okay, which one do we like better? So Claude, we know that Claude's quite good. We've already tested that. We know it. We're still waiting for the other ones. Let's go and see if Supreme hasn't come back yet. But it's running all of them. And by running all of them, we can then look at all of them together and go, right, okay, well, I like that one, I don't like that one, and maybe then we can try and test a few other ones. Now, possibly this might take a little bit of time, so we'll come back to it. But this is a really good way when you are creating a system for a company, for example. If you're creating a system for someone, you've got that prompt, and you think, well, I like Chat-GPT, but there's other ones that we could possibly use. This one over here might be cheaper. This one over here is open source. It could be pretty much free. Let's see which one's best. And you can run it through here and get the comparison and decide which one we like more. Now, this one here seems to have struggled to get the outputs from the other ones, but this is a really useful service, because you can then decide, do we like using the one we were going to go with originally, or is there possibly a better one? And simply put, if we find that out of all of these we actually prefer GPT-3, for example, all we do is go back here, edit the app, and we say, actually, do you know what, I've changed my mind, I don't want to use Claude anymore, I'm going to change it on here, and I'm going to change it over to GPT-3. That's what I'm going to use now, and then I'm going to save it, and everything will stay the same on here, but the API you're using, or the shared document that we've created that we can use, the prompt app, that stays exactly how it is on the front end, but on the back end it's changed. Say, for example, in 2 or 3 months' time, a new open source AI has come out and they've added it to it. All you do is scroll down, say, right, okay, I'm now going to use that one. So I'm now going to use Google. There we go. That's it. That's the one I'm going to use now. And nobody on the other side who's using the service, they don't know, but you do. And that's what's really important with this. Again, think about the recent change when GPT-4 came out. So say if you're running an app at the moment and it's using GPT 3.5 Turbo, you can update it to GPT-4 when the price goes down without any coding, any information changed on the back end, any testing. You do it simply through here and it's done very, very easily. So this has failed on here in terms of running the experiment, quite possibly because I have used something that maybe it doesn't like using, so we'll run it again. But as you can see here, this is an extremely useful service to be able to compare the outputs and decide which one we think is best. So once we've got our prompt sorted here, this prompt chain down here is something I really like. So you can create a prompt chain which is basically a list of different prompts. So for example, if you want to basically create some content, then check the content and update it, for example, you can do it through a prompt chain. On the other hand, if you want to take a bit of copy you've got and run it through and get from a website copy, a Facebook ad, a Google ad, a Twitter post, a LinkedIn post, all of these things, you can do it from one prompt. And what you do is you click create new prompt chain. And what it lets you do is it lets you just link all of the prompts together. Now, I don't, unless it's updated recently for the last time I've used it, you aren't able to then run this through the API. You do need to run this through a prompt chain on Riku itself. But it's still a great service because you go in here and you click this and you've got your static prompt chaining where basically it will create from what you originally give it, or your sequential one where basically it will take the information and run it into each new piece of information you're getting. So the first one, the static one, will take the information in and it will create you, for example, landing page copy, Facebook ad, Google ad, LinkedIn post, Twitter post, while a sequential one will create content and maybe build on it. So you could have, for example, a blog post, introduction, section 1, section 2, section 3, conclusion, go, and it will send the information into each one. Now, one of the reasons why this is in some ways become less important is our chat interfaces now pretty much do that for us because it takes the conversation and builds on each bit of the conversation. But a prompt chain is still really useful when you are, for example, in the sequential one, you are creating some output and then just double checking the output doesn't say anything that's really wrong. So, for example, if you are creating an output that's giving a price, then you can check the price against it in the second prompt, just double check they aren't giving the wrong information out. Now, when you get your prompt chain, so we'll go in here and we'll go landing page text again, because that's what we were doing before, and we'll just go on. And basically, what you just do is you take your prompts from here. So we'll go to this one. It's just basically prompt 1. I know it's not really useful, but we'll go prompt 1 and we'll go prompt, no, we don't want that. We want our translator. And then you go up to 9 different prompts on there, which is extremely useful. So commercial translating is translated. And then we go on to the final step. We won't share it now because it isn't exactly useful to anyone, and we complete it. And there's our prompt chain done. So we go here and we'll go to a restaurant again, and we will create a commercial on the back of it. So what this will simply do is it will do what we've already done. It will create as a commercial, and then once that commercial's come in, it's going to allow us to then translate that commercial, which is extremely useful. If it doesn't have any inputs, what's great about that, and I really like this here, if you just have one input at the beginning and it creates it, there we go. So the downside here is it has not translated. It's a really old one. I probably haven't got that right. But if you take a look here, it's run it straight through. So we could have 9 different things. So we could go, here's a commercial, right, and then we script the commercial. And then once we scripted the commercial, we then translate it into another language. And then once we translate it to another language, we then maybe send it back into the original commercial and write some online adverts for it. First in English and then first in German, and maybe translate them back into English. It wouldn't be very useful, but it's just a way you can run a really unique way of being able to create output using AI just from one prompt, and you can do that through up to 9 different things, which again is really useful. The only downside with it, like I said, is you don't have a way of being able to, for example, you don't have a way of being able to release this publicly, which is the only downside when it comes to the use of it, because you can't create a public app for it, but you can use it for your own agency services really, really well. And especially now that you can use all the different AI models. Again, you've got the option of using Claude for free at the moment. Allows you to be able to basically, with this here, is create a really unique output using just one bit of input. Is a really useful service. So finally, we have the writing studio. Now this, I don't know if it's available to everyone yet, or if you need to be part of the Facebook group to get access to it, because it was the case at the time, but it's been on here a while, so I believe it may be available to everyone now. But what I really like about this is you can't release anything on it to the public, so you can't release this dashboard to the public as part of your public prompt use. But this here is for those people who provide services using these particular prompts. So if you think about using Jasper, for example, and they've got a fully featured editor and writing dashboard that you can use with their prompts, but they don't have your prompts that you've created like they are in here. So what you're able to do is set up a document here, and you get access to use in this document all of the different prompts that are being created by people in the community as open source prompts when they've created them and made them available to everyone, plus your own prompts, and you can just develop a workflow within here. And what's great about it as well is you have all of this on here. So you can create a blog post in here, you can stylize it with the H1s, you can put some videos in, you get your links in, get your images in, then copy it directly from here over into WordPress or wherever you use for your blog posts, and it's done. So you look in here, you've got every single possible thing you could really need, creating all the different tools, all of the different models in there for loads of different purposes, and really incredibly easy for you to just pick some of these out and create your own prompt. So if you look at this instruct mode here, I want to do this, so I want provide a headline and headings for a blog post about AI in the community. So that's going to use GPT-3. It's going to create the headlines and headings for it, and then that's going to start off. There we go. So we'll pop this over here. So okay, well, not the greatest thing, but I don't think we really give it too much information. But we then simply stylize these, and then what we're able to do is then go into one of our own ones. So do you know what? I'm going to take one of my own prompts that I've created in here. We're going to take a, let's go a bit further down. We'll look for, all right, we'll take the full blog writer. So we'll take this one. So here the community why it's so great, and we're going to create ourselves a nice little blog from this. So what we're doing here is we are very simply creating different bits of content just using a document on here, which is going to make the process of getting these bits of content out much easier. So after a couple of weeks of using Riku, coming up with your own prompts or finding out which ones from the open source side, things that you really, really like, what you're able to do is get yourself a workflow that you can use from within this particular dashboard incredibly easily. And once you've got these blog posts, all you have to do is pop them into the editor, stylize them, and then just copy and paste over into your particular blog writer, which is really useful because think of it this way, you're in Chat-GPT, hasn't stylized it right, it hasn't put the links in because it can't, it hasn't done any of that stuff, but you know what, you can do it within here without having to break the flow of your work, which I think is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly useful. Again, this here is probably not the main purpose that I would use Riku for. My main use of Riku is to create prompts that I use publicly, so for your share links, for your API side of things. But this is useful for a lot of people. So we pop this in because we're happy with that. So we'll stick with the why it's so great, so we won't do the other two. Then we just simply stylize it, and we've got ourselves a full blog post in a couple of clicks. But you can make this even better, much, much better moving forward. If you think about where you can go from this, there's a problem. There we go. If you think about where you can go from this, you can take this particular blog post and you can then perhaps expand it using a different prompt in there. You can maybe expand the overall one because we need a conclusion, we don't have one. Let's get a conclusion in here. And you can do that by heading back to these prompts, searching for a conclusion generator, which will almost definitely be here. There we go, there's one. currently have a subscription to 21, so I won't be able to do this. But then what you can do with these ones here is, say if you've only got one particular access to one particular platform, you can take these open source ones here, like this block conclusions one, and you could switch it over into Claude or Chat-GPT and use a different model for it. So this is perhaps not the main thing I would use it for, but if you currently use Jasper and you find yourself maybe a little bit stuck by the fact that you've only got certain different prompts you can use, you're kind of stuck with it, then using this is perfect. Because I mean, if you take a look on here, so I've finished here, I'm going to quickly add another H2, which is conclusion. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to, oh, it has one there, but I want a different conclusion. So I'm going to write for me. It's going to just write from here, same as it would do in Jasper, same as when Shortly was really popular, same as it did there. It's going to write based on what we've got. So I would say here, that's not long enough, let's make it a bit longer. So let's change the output length to longer. Let's maybe go up here instead so we can hopefully get something better. But if you think about how this works, this is really useful for anyone. There we go. For anyone who wants to use the writing side of things, doesn't want to create their own systems, they just want to use this. They just want to be able to get some content using their own prompts, and there we go. So if we take a look at the pricing here, this here is what I think is really useful. So if you just want to use the writing side of things, this Pro Builder one here, $29 a month, much cheaper than other ones, and use your own API key. So when you're using OpenAI or you're using A21, you'll use the API keys from there and you'll be able to use the content within it. Currently, Claude is free in here, and you also get access to GPT-3 free of charge, and a lot of the open source models that he connects to in here free of charge. And that here for $29 a month is a great service. You do still get your API integration as well. So if you want to then build something using Bubble or Dalo or another service, you can do so using that. The advanced builder is for anybody who wants to be able to use a lot more in terms of the API credits on GPT-3 or with some more public share links. You've got your 25 as part of the advanced builder. The only thing at the minute I would be unsure about is the image credit. So it looks like the image side of things from Riku has now gone into Super Machine, and Super Machine seems to be the main focus of the image side of things. There is an image generator in the old dashboard, but it has seemed to be working recently. That is going to be updated soon, so if it is the case that you maybe would want to use images, there is a connection on here to Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, and I believe there may be some other ones that go into it as well. As far as I'm aware, it's going to be using a lot of the same things that I use in Super Machine, which should really improve the images in Riku, but I don't know when that's going to be happening. So these image credits, if that is the only reason you're thinking of going for the higher price one, I would perhaps for the moment stick to the lower price one, only because there is currently no way of using those image credits. But on the whole, this is a great service, and as I said, there is a trial. I said it was 7 days in the beginning. It's actually 5 days, and there's a link in my description of this video to be able to go over and support the channel whilst buying this. I would recommend giving it a try because there are so many things you can do with this, and what is even better than being able to just use this particular product is a community around it. The prompt engineering enthusiasts, which I have also linked to in the description, is a great community of people who want to learn about prompt engineering, and it is where I have spent a lot of time over the years getting used to some of the concepts and learning and working with people who think in a different way. And if you want to get good at prompt engineering, that is a great place to be. So again, thank you for watching the video. It's much longer than I thought it was going to be. I haven't really covered prompt engineering within this video because it's long enough already, and the prompts I have used have been nowhere near good. But what I would say to you when you are thinking about using any platform here is consider what you want to use it for. This platform was one that I picked up early on and was 100% the right purchase for me, because I was in a place where I wanted to focus on building my own AI products and services and offer them to people who would want to use them. And I didn't have the time to be able to do that in a full-on get my head into code kind of way. If you're in a similar position, this is a great product because it is a great way of being able to test and start doing this sort of stuff without having to get your head into creating a full product from scratch. And especially as this is updated very regularly, it's great for that. If you're in a place where you want to get better at prompt engineering, then this is a great place to be, because as you can see, it regularly is updated to include the latest tools, the latest open source products, the latest commercial products like Claude, and put them in here so you can start using them and start getting the hang of the differences very early on. And it is run by somebody who is absolutely 100% in the prompt engineering workspace, is very, very good at it as well. So as I said, this is a great product for anybody who wants that, and I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who's in that kind of position and wants to do that moving forward. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, hopefully this will be back regularly, but I have been super busy recently, so it might be another couple of weeks, or it might be next week, or it might be tomorrow. Who knows when my next video will be. All I would say is subscribe, click the notification bell, and you will know when I do post again, so you can learn about more things like this. And as I said, I've only gone through the product itself here and how this is useful and why it might be useful to different people and how you can use it. But if you want me to go into how you can build certain things using this, please do drop a comment down below, and I'll be more than happy to go in and look at maybe a deep dive into creating a chat service, a deep dive into creating a share document that can do certain things, or we can even get a live video going, which will allow us to be able to work together to do that, so we can really see how this sort of thing can help develop a product or a service that people will want to use. So if that's something you'd be interested in, drop a comment down below. If there's enough comments, I will make it happen. Otherwise, have a great day today. Do like the video, do subscribe, and I will see you next time.